guy grabbed my pocket, like kind of violently. That kind of like pissed me off a little bit. I'm saying to myself, I'm giving you everything. Not fighting it because I already had my strategy in my head. And as he did that, I moved back. And, the streets were uneven. As I'm moving back, I fell over. And the guy jumped on top of me at the corner of my eye. And then I could see a guy come back. And I'm describing this now, but everything happens in seconds, right? So I see a guy leave, see one guy come back. I'm on the ground. His buddy's on top of me. I'm trying to get my gun now from out of my waist to get a good shot at this guy. And when I saw the guy come back, I said, I got to fire. So I kept firing and got this guy off me. And the guy that was coming back, he ain't coming back no more. He's running away.
Hey gang, welcome back to part 2 of this week's episode of Game of Crimes with Murph in the Morning. Going to continue on with the legendary Lew Rice, retired DEA Special Agent who made it all the way up to the Special Agent in charge of the New York Field Division, which for us back in those days was the biggest field division. It probably still is, but Lew, welcome back. Thank you so much for giving us your time again, brother.
Thank you, Murph. Good to be back with you, always.
I tell you what, man, we had a blast yesterday talking about your time in New York, and that's as far as we got in your career because you had so many cool things going on up there. I didn't tell you this yesterday, but when I was a young guy, I watched Serpico, I read the book, I read all the law enforcement books and stuff. I mean, I wanted to be a cop since I was like 10 years old when I had my first run-in with the cops. And I thought, man, I would love to go up and be a city officer in New York City. And now that I've been up there and gotten to meet some of the guys, and there's some retired New York cops here that I go have lunch with every once in a while in Orlando, and they tell me stories. I'm thinking, there's no way this redneck hillbilly would ever survived up there.
No, you would have. You would have. It's just a special place. I mean, people come together to do an impossible job, and they do it with a lot of smile and a lot of enthusiasm. And like we like to say, you have a front row seat to a Broadway play, and a lot of times you're behind the curtain directing. But the spirit, the energy is just unsurpassable.
And I tell you what, when the times that I would go up to New York on business, when I was still on the job, the NYPD guys treated us like old style cops. I remember I was an ASAC in Atlanta, had the OCDF strike force, and we were going up for the OCDF meeting. And so they only wanted me to bring 1 or 2 people. I couldn't do that because I was running a strike force. So I lobbied Washington and all that stuff. Anyway, we ended up taking all my GSs up there, plus a captain from a sheriff's department who provided the money that built the strike force, $600,000. And he's an old Georgia boy. And we go up there, and so we had our meetings, and at the end of the day, they said, what do you guys want to do tonight? And it was after 9/11, and especially the captain, he wanted to go see Ground Zero. And so I told the DEA guys, and they called over one of the NYPD lieutenants. It's like, not a problem. So when we finish at the end of the day, we go out, and there's 2 or 3 unmarked city cars there waiting on us. And they had their sirens tied into their horns. So when I beat my horn, you hit it. When they do that, you get the whoop, whoop.
That's right.
And when traffic was backing up, they're hitting the siren, getting us through. There's no emergency. They're just taking care of us.
Yeah.
When traffic completely stopped, we drove on the sidewalks.
Yeah. Isn't that something? Yeah.
I mean, they were there, they would bend over backwards and doing just old style. It was like that in Chicago also, still old style. You take care of the out-of-town cops.
I tell you, my dad, I mean, he was just, when I graduated from the academy, he had just retired. He came down to Washington, and he was just thrilled that even though I wasn't with the NYPD, I followed his footsteps and I was in law enforcement. And when I became the head of the task force, which, as you know, is the oldest task force in DEA, starting in 1970 with DEA Special Agents, New York State Troopers, and New York detectives. And because my dad was a former detective, he would always ask me, Louis, how are the detectives doing? How are they doing? How are they doing? I said, Dad, they're doing fine, because a lot of times they would drive the agents crazy. He said, they're a special breed. They're a special breed.
Yeah.
And we had that rivalry between the agents and the detectives because they own the city.
Yeah.
And the agents come in from around the country. And I would tell the agents, I said, do me a favor, like you did, right? I tell them, come in, bring your family, come in on the weekend, go to a movie, to go to the park, a Broadway play, just walk around the city. I said, you will see they own this city. Okay. They're all over. We will need them way before they ever need us. I said, as long as I can call them today, Thursday, and I tell them we're going to do an arrest, this part of the city, 7:00 in the morning. And the only thing they ask me is, do you want a quiet assist or do you want uniform? We're good. I said, the day they ask me, tell me a little bit more about the case. Let me get back to you, see if we have manpower. He said, then it's over.
Yeah.
Then it's over. I said, the only thing they're going to ask me is, what do you need? How many people? Quiet, uniform, plain clothes, what? All this other stuff, work it out. I said, but they own the largest police force in the nation. They own this town, and they have a spirit of energy, enthusiasm, and cooperation.
It was, I got to tell you one more quick story here. I was up in New York. This has been a few years ago now, and we were meeting. Javier and I represented a United Talent Agency, when there was a couple of old-time producers that we're working with, and we had been at meetings at UTA about some different projects we're working on. And so these guys they're stone cold New Yorkers, grew up there, and, they're older gentlemen now, but I mean, they grew up in the city and the kids, and they said, no, we're not taking Uber. We're taking the subway. That's how you get around up here. So we did. And we ended up a couple blocks over from Trump Tower. And as we're walking down through there, we come up to the street where Trump Tower is at the intersection. And there's a captain, these are all NYPD folks, a captain, a sergeant, and a ton of patrolmen standing around there. And one of the producers looked over and said, I bet you're afraid to go talk to those guys and tell them who you are. I was like, come on, let me introduce you to them. So we walked over. Before I opened my mouth, the producer's like, hey, do you know who this guy is? You ever see the show Narcos? And they're like, hell yeah, we saw it. And like, well, this is Steve Murphy, the retired DEA agent that was in, portrayed in the show and all that. And they're like, get out of here, And so they're shoving the producers out of the way, coming over, shaking my hands and patting me on the back. I love it. And I'll post a picture that you can see right now of me standing there with those guys. You're one of them. I love it. And you can actually see the Trump Tower in the background. So, but just, I have the utmost respect for you guys in New York. You guys, everybody wants to be like you.
I tell people, if you like law enforcement and you like doing this job, you have to do it in New York City. It's just the spirit, the energy, the enthusiasm, and it's a 24/7 operation, you just feel that you're doing something. The traffic is crazy, the prices are crazy and whatnot, but it's sort of like you walk around only in New York, expect the unexpected.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, when I go to New York now, I'm good for about 2 or 3 days and it's time to go.
But you got to come up. Let me know when you come up. Let me know when you come up.
Absolutely, brother. I will. Mm-hmm. I would be honored. That would be a true honor for me.
No, I'd be honored. You guys, I'm telling you, what you did for DEA as a whole, it makes us feel good. And people start to understand what we do because they don't have any idea, and we don't really have a public facing agency, and the story a lot of time is more accurately and told from people on the outside and what you guys have done. Be able to get Hollywood to tell the true story and how we felt about Camarena. Yeah. I remember watching that episode and I think it was your character said, the DEA guys, they really respect that guy. His picture is on the wall. So yeah, we do. We do respect him.
Javier and I believe that his legacy is one of the things that kept us alive in Colombia because they saw how the United States government under Jack Lawn's leadership responded when one of our agents was kidnapped, tortured, and murdered in Mexico. So, yeah. Good stuff. Brings back good memories. Oh, well, not Kiki, but anyway.
No. But when you say Kiki, it's the response of the U.S. government. You're right. I forget who was the country attaché there in 2000. Oh boy, just before I retired.
You said in 2000. Yeah.
And in Mexico, yeah. Oh boy. I can't
remember either.
I could because we had one of the SAC conferences just before I retired in 2000 in Northern Virginia. And at that time they brought in the country attaches from Colombia, from Thailand, and from Mexico. I forget his name. You'd know him, but he stood up and he said, "Just imagine New York City, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, 3-lane highway. In the car up front is a DEA agent and an FBI agent. In the back seat is the informant. They get stopped by the Mexican police, and the conversation is the guy in the back, he's getting out and coming with us." And he said we went back and forth, and we had the proverbial Mexican standoff.
Yeah.
And he said the only reason they got out of there, okay, was because they said you saw the response from the U.S. government when you guys kidnapped, tortured, and executed Agent Camarena. That was the only reason they got out of there.
Yep. And the bad guy was OCL Cardenas.
There you go. There you go. There you go.
Mm-mm. Yeah. That's it. It's got a reputation.
Yeah.
So, all right. So we've got you coming out of New York now. And did you volunteer to take an overseas assignment?
I did. You know, as you know, every now and then they do a lot of changes. They break up the groups and whatnot, not because of any corruption or any problem, but they just shake things up. And, you know, when I came on initially, people would come on in New York and retire in New York 25 years later. But when the FBI came in, it was about mobility. And I remember one weekend when the FBI transferred probably several hundred grade 14s, first line supervisors that had never been transferred.
Wow.
And so the meaning, what that sent to the field was that, you know, if you've been around 5, 6, 7 years in one location, you haven't taken a transfer, you better volunteer or you'll get sent to somewhere that you have no control over. So people that didn't want to leave or think about leaving looked at other opportunities. And that was what was me. I had spent, I guess 74, 75, 8 years in New York at that time, worked a lot of undercover, a lot of great cases at the conspiracy group down in the Eastern District. So I wanted to get a different picture, you know, learn the overseas. So I volunteered to go to Kingston, Jamaica and put in competitive assignment, you know, competing against others that put in. And I got selected and worked for got another legendary New Yorker who was in charge of the office in Kingston at that time, Garfield Hammonds. I'm fortunate to learn a lot working from him, you know.
Yep. Now, a lot of our listeners know this already, but for those that don't, what authority and responsibility did you have in Jamaica as a U.S. DEA agent?
Well, really, because of the Mansfield Amendment, you cannot work independently. So you have to work, you know, under the approval of the host government. And that plays itself out by the relationship with the local police. So we could not independently conduct any investigation. We'd have to work closely with the narcotics division. And there were already pre-established long-term good relationships with the narcotic division. So we were able to get things done that way. And a lot of our cases were really facilitating cases for U.S. agents where they had a supplier that promised them marijuana or promised them cocaine because those trafficking routes were getting developed while I was there for a while, and we would facilitate, you know. But because, you know, we had a small operation, we had diplomatic plates, people knew what our job was, and so we were very careful when we would facilitate these undercover operations. And rather than, you know, like normally agents coming in, you meet them at the airport, you help them get into the hotel, you drive around with them. We tell them, you know, we're in Kingston, you know, we'll meet you at this hotel in Montego Bay or Negril or Ocho Rios in the afternoon. Come dressed down like a tourist and have the conversations like that. Because the traffickers, you know, they own that town, you know, and we befriended one of the one of the ladies that managed one of the restaurants there in Kingston, and she told us to be careful. She said, "You guys got a lot of people smile in your face and act like they're your friend." And he said, "But a lot of people made money from marijuana trafficking." He said, "So just be careful, and I'm going to help you with that." And she was honest with us. She said, "If the people want to go after you," she said, "they don't necessarily go directly after you. You're walking across the street, and oh my goodness, a car jumps the sidewalk and hits you, so it be perceived as an accident." So it was kind of, understanding that, I mean, that kind of stuff you didn't worry about too much in the States, but you realize that, a lot of people gained a lot of money, property, and influence on marijuana trafficking, back then. So it was a word to the wise.
There's one thing I forgot to ask you about. Before you transferred down there, I think you'd been at somebody's going away party one evening in New York City, and you had a traumatic event happened in your life that night, right?
Yeah, shooting. Yeah, 1982, matter of fact.
You mind talking about that?
Yeah, it was just one of those things. I mean, it's 1980s. New York always had an issue with violence and drugs and gangs, and leaving an establishment in Brooklyn, late one afternoon, and it was about 1:00 in the morning, and I saw a couple of guys coming towards me, and they were walking one way. I was walking the other way, and it didn't raise me up at all. Just, it's New York. It's a 24-hour city. I've been out late before, and I've seen other people out late before, but as we started to get closer to each other, and I was trying to pass, they kind of did a semicircle around me and said, "This is it." And one guy had his hand in his pocket. When he said, "This is it," I kind of knew what that meant, and I had a jacket on like I have now, no tie, open collar shirt, and I had a chain with Jesus Christ on the chain, a little small chain, which my mother had given me, underneath my shirt. And so when he said, "This is it," I gave him my watch, in my head, I'm thinking, I have my gun on my waist, I'm in pretty good shape, 30 years old, wasn't like overweight like I am now. I figured 5 guys, they're going to bolt once they got everything they want. I'll catch the last guy, and the last guy will lead us to the other guy, to the rest of them, as the old Frank White thinking, that the game plan as things change and whatnot. So already had a strategy in my own head. But it changed a little when I was taking, my little billfold of money. I think I only had like $12 or $22 in my pocket to give it to him. And the guy grabbed my pocket like kind of violently. And that kind of like pissed me off a little bit. I'm saying to myself, "I'm giving you everything," not fighting it, because I already had my strategy in my head. And as he did that, I moved back. And, the streets were uneven. And as I'm moving back, I fell over, and the guy jumped on top of me, And as I'm looking, I could see guys run away, right, at the corner of my eye. And then I could see a guy come back. And, I'm describing this now, but everything happens in seconds, right? So I see a guy leave. Several leave. I see one guy come back. I'm on the ground. His buddy's on top of me. I'm trying to get my gun now from out of my waist to get a good shot at this guy, And when I saw the guy come back, I said, "I just got to fire." So I kept firing and got this guy off me. And the guy that was coming back, he ain't coming back no more. He's running away, And there was a car stopped in the middle of the street. I don't know if he stopped at a light or not, because he saw the fireworks and all that other stuff. So I know he wasn't waiting for the light to turn green, but he saw me run over there. Now, at that point, you got to realize it's the middle of the night. I'm bleeding. He's seen the gunshots and whatnot. There's a guy laying on the ground, and I have a bullet hole in my pants and whatnot where the bullet went through. I get, and asked him, I said, asked him to move over. He said, I don't have any brakes. I said, no, that's all right. 'Cause I knew where the police station was. So he moved over. I got in the driver's side. I drove to the police station, which was like 2, 3 minutes away. And, as I replay this in my mind, here it is 1 o'clock in the morning. There's a black guy coming in there with a gun in his hand. He's bleeding out of his leg. And right away, the duty captain, the sergeant at the desk is, real calm and, all right, relax. He wanted to make sure he got my gun and got the gun. And I'm saying, well, we can go out and let's get these guys. We got to get you to the hospital. So we're going back and forth. But because in my mind, let's get these guys. Let's go out and get these guys. But he said, no, we got to get you to the hospital. We got to get you to the hospital. So they took me to the hospital, and, just talking to the cops and, the New York City cops, they in the window, in the little window, I'm in the room, they're outside guarding the room and they'd give me the thumbs up and, but it's a traumatic thing because you're in a shooting and, most of the times you do your career, the only time you're shooting is at the range, and then everything happens so fast, you start to start to relive it and realize how the wrong decision or a late decision could have resulted in a different way where you didn't make it. And you realize, boy, everything is instinct, and it reminded me of something that happened a couple of years earlier when I was doing an undercover a deal down in the Lower East Side, and a guy pulled the gun. I was able to take the gun from him, and Frank White wrote me up, and he sent it to John Fallon, who was the regional director at that time, and Fallon sent it back and said, "Put this agent in for a monetary award." It was my first award. And Frank, he was just impressed, and he said, this will serve you well. He said, because if you ever have to shoot somebody, we have it on record where you could have shot somebody because you had a dangerous situation and you did not. So you're not going to be perceived as a cowboy that just wants to go out there and shoot people. These are those lessons learned. But what you realize in those situations, Murph, is everything happens fast. It's instinct. And when the public and the media are writing about this thing, they kind of freeze frame it and talk about it. And, how come you didn't do this? You don't realize it happened so fast. And so because of that, when I became the SAC of New York, we took a group of, we used to do this for the business community, but I did it for media reporters, print and electronic media. We gave them a briefing in the office, and then we took them out to Camp Smith to the range so they can go through the range and the tactics and the decision strategy shootings where you see the screen and there's a lady and a baby and the pregnancy and, put that pressure in there. And I told them before I put them through that, I said, my only goal here is when you're writing these stories and telling these stories, you realize the stress that people undergo when they have to make quick snap decisions, that you realize it's not like we're socialized with TV, shoot the guy in the left arm or do the warning shot, because we're not authorized to do that shot. But you realize that under the best circumstances, you may shoot the wrong person, to add some balance, because a lot of times it's not that they want to vilify us, but they just don't understand. And putting somebody in that environment, they don't realize how much pressure you're under, and you think you saw something, but maybe you didn't really see it. And if you have to articulate it, you can't really articulate it. You just, in the moment, you felt it was the right thing to fire based on these circumstances, and you realize, well, the guy didn't have a gun; he had a pen.
Yeah, there was. After I retired, we were in Los Angeles for some event, and the field division had. They brought in the producers and some of the actors from the Narco series, and but the field division set up their shoot, don't shoot. We were out on the beach off the Pacific Coast Highway, and there were hundreds of people there, and they were letting them. That was the biggest attraction there, was go into that tent, because it was the shoot, don't shoot, the old fat system.
Right, right.
And when they would come out, you could see people were shaking, they were sweating, they were giddy, because they had just experienced that stress and anxiety that law enforcement goes through on a regular basis, on a daily basis in a lot of places.
Yes.
But it was one of the best things I ever saw to change people's mind to, why don't you wing them? Why did you have to shoot them and kill them?
Right,
and
right.
Now that they've been through, even though it's a mock situation and they're not going to get hurt, they realize, man, it's not as easy as everybody thinks it is, like they portray in the movies.
I think we need to do more of that. There's a different generation out there, and it kind of brings people together and have them understanding. Because if you meet these agents, I mean, these could be your brothers, your cousins, your sisters, and whatnot. They're just decent people that have been tasked involuntarily to do an impossible job, and thank God that they volunteered to do this job. So I think we ought to do more of that, to have civilians, especially people writing these stories. You write what you want to write, but at least sit in that environment, and sometimes you're responding aggressively to things that you think you saw or heard, but you actually didn't. No malicious intent. You just everything happens so fast,
right.
So fast.
Very eye-opening.
Mm-hmm.
So you do a couple of years in Jamaica. What's your next stop?
First supervisory job is in Miami in 1984.
Well, I love Miami.
Yes.
Even to this day, Miami is still, for my wife and I, it's our favorite city in the entire United States. Although it's grown so big and it's gotten pretty violent down there now. I don't know that I'd like it so much now.
Yeah, but it's to me, it's sort of like New York, because it's you have the restaurants, you have the entertainment, you have the art scene, fashion, and with Miami, you got the water, you got the beach, you got people's sunglasses, they get everybody's looking good and feeling good out there. Mm-hmm.
Hey, we're like that here in Orlando. We just don't have the beach.
I hear you. Yeah, I hear you. Yes, a little bit different in the Northeast, but it's okay.
There weren't any heroin cases you worked when you were in Miami, was there?
No, for the most part, all cocaine, all cocaine, and we were, there was so much cocaine coming into the U.S. at that time, and Miami was like Colombia, so most of the places around the country were going into Miami because those were the sources of supply. So the special agent in charge at that time, Pete Gruden, designated two groups, one group east of the Mississippi, another group west of the Mississippi. You facilitate and help all these agents around the country coming into Miami as a source country for cocaine. And that's what we did. And we were extremely busy. We could do our own cases, but we had enough trying to help everybody out. And so their cases didn't linger.
Yeah. You're the response group. And it's very taxing on your resources.
Yes.
I think I read you had enforcement group 3.
Group 3, yes. Mm-hmm.
And other than being a response group, did you guys have a specialty, or it was just whatever cocaine cases you could develop?
Whatever cocaine, to facilitate, help the other agents out, and then we could do our own. And so we were doing, knockoff cases here and there, And at that time, we didn't have a lot of reasons. We had a lot of younger agents, and Miami was heard for experienced agents. Experienced agents like at the grade 13 level. I had 10 agents in the group at that time, only 2 13s. And so, rather than have junior agents partnered up with junior agents, I just split it up to 2 13s. One 13 had 4 agents, the other 13 had 4 agents. Those made up my 10 agents. And so at least they had a team leader that was an experienced GS-13.
Yeah, and for our listeners, the GS-13 is a journeyman level. That's as high as you can go without going into the supervisory ranks. So these are your most experienced agents that have been on the job for a while.
Yeah.
You do a few years there, and then, or 2 years, isn't it?
2 years, yeah.
And in DEA, if you go the supervisory route, there's a requirement. Once you've had some experience as a supervisor in the field, you got to go to headquarters, right?
Right.
And where'd you end up?
I ended up in an inspection at headquarters. And at that time, the FBI had just came in to DEA. Reagan was the president in the 80s. Meese was the attorney general. And there was a strong discussion about merging DEA into the FBI. So the leadership of DEA changed, and it was the current leadership was replaced by current FBI executives. And one of the FBI's management programs is that they wanted experienced supervisors to come into headquarters. The mobility to look at, let's say, drug trafficking, criminal activity from large offices, medium-sized offices to get a better understanding, but also come into headquarters where policy is made and understand, how do you administer criminal justice in a global organization, and also bring your experience into headquarters, because you can get stale in headquarters if you're just reading books and going to briefings. You need to really have those people coming in from the field. And at that time, the Office of Inspection was considered like a powerhouse in terms of career development, because the guy in charge of inspection was Pete Gruden, and he was the SAC, and he was going down there to lead up inspection, and he brought 3 of his supervisors with him. He brought me. I was supervisor in Miami. He brought Vinny Mazzilli, who was a supervisor, the resident agent in charge in West Palm Beach, and he brought Felix Jimenez, who was a resident agent in charge in Orlando, with him. And the feeling was at that time in the agency, if you went to inspection, the field inspection where you traveled around and did the evaluation of the offices, which was a lot of travel, 80 to 90% on the road, that after a year, 18 months there, either you were going to get promoted or they would send you to a location where you wanted to go. So, and the leadership there were on the career board, and they were very influential. And so people were volunteering at that time. Luckily for me, Vinny and Felix, we didn't have to volunteer. Pete took us with him to inspection, but people were volunteering around the world because they realized that, hey, you get over there, you're going to get promoted at the end of the assignment, because they realize all the stress of traveling, or they're going to send you to a location where you want to go, and for upper management, going to inspection, the field evaluation was really an eye-opener and a great learning experience of what it takes to run an effective office. Interview all the agents in the office, talk to all the counterparts in terms of the local police department, the FBI, ATF, the other federal agencies. You talk to the federal prosecutors because you want to know, are the agents showing up prepared to testify in court, or their cases well developed, or are there any things that we should do better? And it gave you a focus that the agency is really focused on getting the best bang out of employees, and for the American public and the taxpayers to do something about this drug situation. And when the FBI came in, they saw that DEA had a strategy. They had a strategy for identifying who the top people were around the world, how they were able to facilitate narcotics trafficking in the United States, and working with the federal prosecutors, coming up with unique ways of indicting them and trying to arrest them and bring them to the United States. So they may have came over with the goal of merging DEA into the FBI, but under Bud Mullen and Jack Long, they came back with a recommendation: leave DEA as a separate standalone agency. They don't, and these were FBI guys. You would think that they'd say, yeah, just move them into our role. So no, they're doing a great job the way they are, and they're well respected. We talked to counterparts, local police. We talked to prosecutors. They said, hey, we enjoy working with the DEA guys. Their cases are well investigated, and we're always looking at the top. And, that keeps getting facilitated because the career development is based on the highest level trafficker.
Right.
So, we were taught in New York that if you can see the guy out there selling drugs, he's not a major trafficker. We may invest some time in this, working with the local police if there's a nexus towards violence, but we don't want the local guy that everybody can see. We want the people that are supplying that local guy and other people other neighborhoods that got us to distance themselves from narcotics trafficking. Those are the people that we want. Yeah. And we had the tools to go get these guys,
Love it. Love it. So after a few years in inspections, what's your next stop?
I get promoted in Washington, and I go to as a number 2 in personnel back then, but would be considered HR. And at that time, there was a philosophy along with the movement. There was a philosophy of putting special agents in traditionally non-agent assignments. So normally in personnel HR, they were all personnel and HR specialists. But there was a feeling in the agency, we want to put agents in these assignments because agents are going to be maybe a little bit more motivated to help out the field. And so it was an eye-opener for me also, because as you're going up the line and you're becoming more of an administrator, you're understanding, about human relations. You're understanding we had agent assignment in there. We had career development programs in there. And, we had grievance committee. I was on the performance rating grievance committee. So all these other assignments that don't have anything to do with investigating and locking people up, but these were administrative functions that are very important if you're going to run an office, So, and it got me the opportunity to meet the other key players in the different sections, Board of Professional Conduct, working with the Deputy Administrator's Office, with the Executive Secretary to the Career Board. So it was a good education for me. The 2 years I spent in headquarters before I went to Philadelphia.
Yeah, that was, and it's very few people want to go to headquarters, or at least that's the way it was as I was coming up. But the benefit from it, I thought I was going to, I went to Special Operations Division. It's the first time in headquarters. And I thought, well, I'll come up here and do my 2 or 3 years and get back out to the field. I felt like Gilligan on the boat, man. I got on the island. I couldn't get out. I ended up doing 5 years there. But the network that you made, and you probably remember this. So as a young agent, your boss, you'd go explain a case to him, and he'd say, okay, that ties into LA and Houston. Call this person in LA, call this person in Houston, and you know what? Call this person over in Bangkok. And I'm thinking, how in the heck does he know all these people? And so after you do your time at headquarters and then you go back out to the field, now you're the one telling your GSs and your investigators, okay, call this person, call that person, tell them I told you to call.
Yeah.
The connections in the network, that's how you get things done.
Yeah, without a doubt. And headquarters becomes our assessment center. Because, the career board meets in headquarters, and you're in that building every day. So they get to see you. They get to see how you handle yourself in meetings, how you handle special projects, how you present yourself. So I tell people, career board, the headquarters is your assessment center. Yeah. People are looking at, these are our future leaders. And so when your name comes up, it's not just a name with a bio, it's a name that, hey, we saw this person. They were involved. They were in the building. They were working in this section. They handled this project. They did a great job working with our counterparts in the Justice Department or the other intelligence or investigative agencies. This is the person we want leading our operation out in the field. So it was a wealth of experience working in headquarters. And again, like you mentioned, that network's unbelievable because you know who to call and when policies come out, maybe not having been involved in the decision making, but you can understand how they got to that point. You understand that they don't make these policies willy-nilly. Something happens somewhere, and these are the learning experiences to make sure that we don't have a problem in the future. And the policies that agents may figure, well, they're putting more roadblocks. No, they're trying to protect you down the long run, to make sure that we're doing these things the right way. And if anybody has a challenge, we can successfully mitigate that challenge. So it was a great experience, and I still, sometimes you get transferred and you don't want to, but going to the headquarters is a great experience. And it's not easy in headquarters. I mean, the field in New York, we get in there maybe 10 o'clock and
Yeah.
and headquarters. I mean, 7:30 people are in there, you know? So it's a different skill set. So when people would badmouth headquarters to me, I'd say, yeah, you go down there for 30 days. I said, these guys are in there early in the morning. I said, you're still sleeping and whatnot. These guys are in there at work, you know? So it's a different skill set, but to move guys from the field to headquarters, then they operate with that sense of urgency because they know the field needs this, and you know if they got to get a signature over here or over there, they go and get it done. You know,
I used to tell people they come in and they say, really didn't want to be here. Look, it's as good or as bad as you make it.
right?
You know, you're here. Make the best of it. Meet as many people as you can because it's going to pay off in the long run.
Right. No, you're right. I mean, if you have to be somewhere, why go in there with your mouth poked out? I mean, it makes it for a long day.
Exactly.
I mean, you go in there with a good attitude and say, "Let me learn. And I have a philosophy and a feeling that if you're a good agent in the field, you're going to be a good agent anywhere you go. You may not want to go into headquarters, but once you get there, you're going to say, let me find out and let me, because you can help. That's the helping center. People need help from the field. You're going to be immediately responsive and say, well, okay, this is the help I can give you, but I can give you some more help because we got another special project that we're thinking about, and we got money and travel, and we'll open up the doors for you to travel over there, you know, so.
So you come out of headquarters and now you're getting a promotion again, right?
I got promoted in headquarters, and then I got a lateral as an ASAC in Philadelphia. You know,
Did you want to go to Philly?
I didn't mind going to Philly. I did not put in for it. But I liked the field. So to me, I did, you know, all the traveling and inspection. I got promoted to go deputy in personnel. I was ready to get out back to the field. I said, you know, if I get back out there 2.5 years, and Philadelphia's a great city. You know, it's to me, it was going to be on the East Coast. I'm close to New York, you know, close to Washington, D.C. if I need to get back there. So I really enjoyed Philly, you know.
But your next stop after Philly was kind of special, right?
Yeah, I went back to the task force. Yeah, back to New York. Yeah.
So what we're talking about is the New York Drug Enforcement
Task Force. That's right. That was a promotion. You know, I got promoted to go there. You know, and it's interesting too. Bob Bryden was the SAC. You know. And, you know, I knew Bob Bryden, not really, I knew his name. He knew my name, never really worked in the same environment as him. And, you know, he supported the guys in New York. But when I got the job, one of the first calls I got was from Bob Bryden. And he called me, he said, hey, I know you're a native New Yorker. You know, a lot of people up here. I want you to come up here, you know. And he said, I just want you to hang out with me in the office. You know, I'm going to be talking to people, meeting with people. I'll tell you what we're talking about beforehand. You'll hear the conversation and whatnot, and we'll talk about it afterwards. And then you could spend some time reestablishing those ties with people you knew way back when, and now are in key positions in various levels in the city and whatnot. And I had never thought about that before, but what a great experience, you know, to come back and to understand his management style. You know, and understand what the issues were and where he was going with these issues. So it paid off a tremendous amount of dividends to me.
That's called leadership.
Yes, 100%, 100%. I mean, I learned a lot from that guy, and he was a good leader and very supportive of me, and had a good time with him. I enjoyed my time, and of course, enjoyed being back in New York with the task force. You know, and the task force was making a lot of cases back then, and you know, I came in there on the heels of a scandal. I mean. There was the 3 members of the task force had been arrested. So there were a lot of morale issues there and the liaise and people transferred, people leaving, a lot of undecidedness and whatnot. So with all that coming in at the top, working with the leadership team in there, you know, bringing the supervisors together, all the agents together, and talking about, we need to get ourselves together because we have a mission out there that's not stopping. We got a problem in drugs with New York, crack cocaine. We still had the heroin. We had the tools to go after these guys, and let's get together and focus on the major drug guys, which we did.
It's got its own reputation. Is it John Maltz? Was he up there?
Yes,
during your time?
I replaced him. Yeah.
And then a lot of our listeners know Derek Maltz, his son, who I worked with. He was my ASAC in special operations. Then later, when he was a SAC, I was already promoted up to 15, but he brought me in as executive assistant, which I lovingly refer to as Derek's butt boy. I love the guy though, man. I mean, just talk about somebody's energetic.
Yeah, the passion. He's got the passion.
And still does to this day. He's been a prior guest on the show. And
has he? Okay.
He has. And actually, I'm going to bring him back on with another prior guest to talk about counterfeit medications and some of the things that are going on with fentanyl and all that. So
good.
I wish I had his energy.
He's got the passion. Yeah, you can tell he's one of those guys that whatever the issue is, you're going to vote on his side because you realize he's got the passion, the enthusiasm, and he's going to make it happen.
And he's because
for every good idea, you have to have a passionate advocate. You can have the best idea in the world, but you don't have somebody that's really passionate about it to move it forward. It's going to die.
So after a couple of years in the task force there in New York, you get promoted up to the senior executive service ranks next, right?
Well, the promotion in New York was senior executive service.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the head of the task force. Yeah, so that was the senior executive service. I get promoted to leave New York to go to Detroit, the SAC of Detroit, which at that time handled the states of Michigan, Ohio, and Kentucky.
And I read in your book because I'll be honest with you, the only thing I've ever heard about Detroit is bad.
Yeah.
And I think you explained it very well in your book. When you come into that position, it's bad. The businesses have moved out of downtown. There's a bad history here, but what can we do to make it better?
Yeah.
And the strides that you guys made, I mean, it was very admirable.
Great office. In my opinion, Detroit was overshadowed by Chicago as a bigger division, but you had some great agents there. One who Dick Kroc.
Yeah.
That's why I met Dick Kroc,
Love that guy.
Yeah, exactly. With the leader of Survivors Benefit Fund. He was one of my supervisors in Detroit. We had some problems in there, but my style is to bring people together. They allowed me to bring in some supervisors and whatnot. So we had a whole different management team, and we were rocking and rolling. We had an award ceremony, and I was only in Detroit 11 months. We had an award ceremony where we recognized people for doing some great work. We had a conference that brought everybody, all the supervisors together. And so we had a lot of spirit. And I used to say DEA Detroit, a division on the move. We had the Mayor Archer came over, spoke to the agents. So we were doing a lot of morale boosters and morale booster in the agency. We had a great reputation with the Detroit police. So we were doing some great things in Detroit, a lot of energy. And because I got sent there, by the administrator, and they supported me with supervisors and new employees, I could reward these guys for the great things that they were doing. And they started to realize that they're not operating in the shadows of Chicago. They're their own division, and people are watching and respecting what they're doing. So I had a great job. Only there 11 months, but a great job and a great time in Detroit. And I got promoted from Detroit to go to New York, and it's funny too because everybody knew that the SAC was going to retire in New York, and everybody knew I was a native New Yorker. But then when I got sent to Detroit, people figured they're never going to bring you back, but they did, And Tom Constantine was a SAC, and he told me he did that purposely. He said, I was always going to bring you back. He said, you were doing a good job in New York, but I wanted you to be the number one guy somewhere. He said, because when you're number two, all the issues or problems go to the number one, they farm them down. But I wanted you to be the number one to experience that for a year, which I did. But anybody knows anything about Tom Constantine, uh, tough guy, fair guy, but just his way or the highway kind of guy. But he selects me to New York. We had the old time SAC secretary there, and these were the phones, Murph, that the little light would go on or out and whatnot. So the secretary, she's an old time SAC secretary. She's been there for 100 years. She knows I'm a New Yorker. She said, the administrator's on the phone. And so I get on the phone in my office. And he asked me, he said, are you in the office? I said, yes. You by yourself? I said, yes. He says, is your door closed? I said, no. He said, close the door. So I close the door. Now the light's on my phone and the light's on her phone. So he tells me, I'm promoting you. You're going to New York. He said, but I don't want you to say anything yet. Okay. I want to talk to some people in New York to make sure you get the great reception and whatnot. Then I'll call you back and I'll tell you when you can let the word out. So I said, okay, fine. Thank you. Appreciate it. I'm loving this and whatnot. I said, this is a secretary out there. She's very experienced. She worked for a lot of SACs. I said, she knows you called. She knows I'm a New Yorker. She knows she's going to know the SAC in New York retired. I said, the door opens up. I'm not going to say anything, but she's going to try to read my face and just figure, oh, he's going to New York. He's going to New York, So he says to me, maybe you better not open up the door. So I said, okay, I won't open up the door. So we end the conversation. The light goes out, right? So the light goes out on the phone. So she knows I'm still in there. The door's still closed. So after a few minutes, you okay in there? So yeah, need some coffee? Want a sandwich? No. Lunchtime comes out. You want a sandwich? I said, no. And I'm saying to myself, I'll be the first guy that got a job and then didn't get a job. I said, once we make eye contact, she's going to, whatever look is on my face, she's going to go, he's got New York. He's got New York. So I stayed in there with the light out and whatnot. And finally called back, okay, you can let it out.
Oh, you know what? That's those people know. They have experience. They know.
Experienced SAC secretary. They've seen the moves before. They know what's going on. They don't have to actually read it. They know exactly what's going on.
How long are you the SAC in New York?
Close to 4 years. I came in March of '97, retired January 2001.
Would you consider that the pinnacle of your career?
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, to start as a grade 7 in New York City, running around that office, and we'd all talk about, we're going to be one. If I was in charge, I'll do this, I was going to do that, and then to come back, it was mission accomplished. I mean, Donnie Marshall came in after Tom Constantine, and he asked me to come back down there. And I told him, I said, well, Donnie, I don't want to. I said, but if I have to, I will. I said, but I can't. My daughter was in high school. I said, I can't take her out of high school because to me, I said, high school's more important than college. She's in a good peer group. I had taken 7 moves already. She's got good friends. She's doing good in school. I should bring her to another high school. She don't know anybody. Maybe she do stupid things to blend in. I want to keep her life separate. So, and Donnie Marshall, always a decent man. He says, okay. He said, Lou, I understand. No problem. He said, but I may have to come back at you in another year or two. So that told me that, hey, luckily we have FERS. FERS says 25 years, regardless of the age, you can say sayonara. I said, starting as a grade 7, retiring as a SAC in New York where I started, I'm kind of like mission complete. And then so I started to think about it. I said, time to think about life after,
and that's what I refer to our families as the unsung heroes, because
yes,
we accept the responsibilities of our jobs, and when we're asked to do something, we do it, which is usually detrimental to our family because we have to pick up and move. So hats off to the family, but hats off to you too that you finally said, no, I'm going to do this for my family this time.
Yeah, I had to, I had to, because I had taken 7 moves. I said, only to go down to Washington. I'm only going to want to come back, because I'm from New York. I'm from Queens. My wife's from Brooklyn. My wife's mom was still alive back then. So I'm going back home. So I had to. I said only to go down there. I said I'd only be coming back anyway. So I'm where I need to be. I was away for 12 years. 12 years, 7 moves. I said that's kind of enough. I mean, they weren't bad moves. I enjoy. I can't say I worked any place where I didn't have a good time. And a lot of that is the attitude you bring to it.
Exactly.
But all these places were super places, and I learned a lot. But it was nice to be back home.
Did you have something lined up when you retired from DEA, or did you have to go look for a job?
No. I had. There was a guy by the name of, and this is where you come in with mentors. There was a guy by the name of Pete O'Neill, and Pete O'Neill was a very successful businessman in New York. He was an FBI agent early on for about 4 or 5 years. But then went into private business, and he saw his role as connecting guys in law enforcement with the private sector. And so he just got a kick out of doing that. And so he knew the recruiter for a security job at Time Inc. And he told me the publishing side of Time Warner, right? So he told me about it, interviewed, I wound up getting the job, and then so I retired. And then another guy, I'm there for about a year or so, another guy who was a mentor for me, Henry DeGenesti, former head of the Port Authority, New York, New Jersey. He was the lead security guy for Prudential Financial. And he was down there, and they were on Water Street. So they saw the planes hit down at 9/11. And so he was going to go from Water Street to Prudential Financial headquarters in Newark, New Jersey. And he wanted me to come in to backfill him there. So he recruited me to go over there. So I went, left Time Inc. And I learned for a year and a half, especially leaving government, going to the private sector. Went over to Time Inc. Spent a year and a half there, but after I'm there about 90 days, Wachovia comes in, and Wachovia says, we're going to buy Prudential Securities, rather. We're going to buy it. The head of security was a former FBI guy, and they're headquartered in North Carolina. Real decent guy. And he said, this is the deal, Lou. He said, it's going to take us 18 months to do the merger. You're good for 18 months. He said, after that, we'd have to talk. I said, okay, that's fine, 18 months. But, if I would try to compete for that job, his job when he left, it's in North Carolina. I didn't want to go to North Carolina. I wanted to be in New York and whatnot, but at least I got 18 months. So I said, let me start looking now and just keep my ear open. And Pete O'Neill again said, hey, Lou, there's a job opening up at the Estee Lauder companies, right? I said, okay. And then there was another guy in the business community that says, I know William Lauder. And so they give me a resume, send it to William Lauder, and, I get interviewed for the job, get interviewed by the head of HR and then the head of operations where the job reported to, and each one independently when I'm doing the interview. So how do you know William Lauder? I said, no, I don't know William Lauder. I know a guy that knows him in the business community. So that's how I know William Lauder. But the interesting thing about that job is, and this is the networking, right? And treating people with respect. As I told you before, how we would bring the media in, give them an overview of what we've done at DEA. There'd always be something timely going on in the case, probably New York related. We tell them something a little bit more about that. That wasn't confidential, but maybe didn't make the papers and whatnot. And then we take them to Camp Smith to do the facts and the shooting and the raids and whatnot. We did that with the business community, right? So during one of these operations, we had people, CEOs. We had the CEO of Estee Lauder companies. We had the CEO of Revlon and a couple other CEOs. Something we do with the business community, something we did with the media, 2.5 years later, I'm at the Estee Lauder company applying for the job, right? The CEO knocks on the door of the COO, who I'm in there interviewing with at the little small table, looks at me, looks at the COO, and he asked the COO, could you leave your office, right? So the COO is doing a Michael Jackson moonwalk backwards, walking out of his office, like what's going on here?
Yeah.
The guy asking me to leave my own office. What am I going to do? Hang out in the hallway? So he leaves his office. The CEO sits down at the little table, and he's looking at me, and he could see my body language. He says, "You don't remember me, do you?" I said, "No, not really." He said, "I was in your office 2 years ago. You gave us an overview of DEA globally. You took us up to Camp Smith." And I said, "Okay." I said, we did that on the regular for business community, the media and whatnot. He said, "I should have hired you back then." So we had a nice conversation. So I go back to these guys and talk about transitioning from the government to the private sector. Treat people with respect.
Yes.
Treat people with respect. I said, I could have been late for the briefing, gave these guys some briefing that said, something, I do real work. I do real dangerous work. That's why I need this 9mm. The only thing you guys could experience during the course of a day is a paper cut. I could have, not actually said that, but talked to them in a way that they got that message, right?
Right.
2 years later, I don't remember them. They remember me. And they said, this bozo will never be here, I said, treat people with respect. Okay. I said, if you don't know how much goodwill that gets, I said, you don't know, why treat people with respect, treat them with respect. And fortunately, that was part of my DNA, and that guy remembered that. Said otherwise, I wouldn't have gotten the job and had no reason why, had no idea why, but because, a little pompous and whatnot. So treat people with respect. It goes a long way.
That's good advice. Good advice. How long did you spend with Estee Lauder?
21 years. Wow. 21 years, 8 months. Yeah.
That's a whole nother career. Wow.
Yeah, whole nother career. Whole nother career. Yeah. So I came in, they brought me in to build a global security team. It's a global company. We hired a couple of DEA agents, guys you may know, Mark Gray, who runs the operation in APAC, Asia Pacific.
Yeah.
Before him was Russ Holsky,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. How about that? So are you still working?
No, I'm retired. I want to tell a DEA story. That's what I want to do. I want to do a doc on DEA, especially the early years when it was, was a thought, but it was a thought in some challenging environments to have something specifically for narcotics, especially with the undercover, which was all prevalent that during that time, and it paid off. So I want to do a doc on that talks about the undercover work, the challenges that the agency was up against internally, externally, and how we were able to survive, because it definitely wasn't easy, especially in New York, because we were coming against more established agencies like the NYPD and the FBI. They're a lot more established than DEA, and a lot of stronger network and a stronger culture. And, they're looking at what's this new upstart agency trying to operate here,
Yeah. But look at us now.
Yes, without a doubt. Without a doubt. Without a doubt. Without a doubt.
I want to recognize you for one thing. In 1998, you received a special award for the President of the United States, didn't you?
Yes.
What is that? What was that?
Well, you've received this also. It's the Senior Executive Service. We become part of the Senior Executive Service, which is the policy level for the federal government, which is a process that, it's got to get approval from the Department of Justice, which takes your last 3, 4, 5 years of documented superior performance and only a certain amount that are allowable every fiscal year. And for the Senior Executive Service, and then that special award within DEA from the Department of Justice, which is close to my heart, because as you know, you don't do these assignments for the recognition. You realize sometimes you're going to get it, sometimes you won't. but you realize that, and when you don't get it, especially early on, I mean, you get pissed off, you may kick the can, but then you realize the big picture that, you got to get over that because there are people that need your help. The people that are struggling out there, they're in much worse shape. And if you're not on your A game, that's not going to help them with their families and their communities. So it's nice to be recognized for the work that you do, and that's what I found with the business community. I mean, they in New York, there's a strong relationship with the Federal Enforcement Homeland Security Foundation run by Rich Kendall, the Federal Law Enforcement Foundation run by John Catsimatidis. These are strong organizations that have a long history, 20-year plus, supporting federal agencies. Most of them started with the FBI, and then they expanded based on the other agencies.
Yeah. Yeah, well, when I got my SES, the president didn't call me.
Right.
I think they were considered worried about my accent that the president at the time probably wouldn't understand what I was saying.
Think about it. You're right, because when we used to talk about the discipline on agents, and you look at that, what happened, what did the agent do, and then you try to understand, did the agent do it because the agent was mischievous or devious, or did the agent really, in his own mind or her own mind, see themselves walking across the stage, shaking the president of the United States' hand, and the president saying, "Thank you, Agent such and such, for protecting American citizens." And usually it's the latter, I mean, you erred on the side of, you really felt that you were going to get that pat on the back from the agent. I remember Bensinger, when he was the administrator, and we were having some morale issues in New York in the 70s, and he came in there and he gave a pep talk, and he said, the American public really appreciates what you guys in New York do. You're the engine. And he knew, any administrator, if he's talking about the top 5 cases, 2, maybe 3 of them are coming out of New York when he has to go on the Hill, right? But Bensinger said, if you take your badge out and you put it to your ear, you could hear the applause of the American public, right? So the place erupted in laughter. They erupted in, this guy. But as soon as he left, walking down the hall, you could see all the agents. And I being one of them, said, maybe you can hear something.
Yeah.
Maybe you can hear something.
Oh, I love those kind of stories.
They laugh, but they were looking for it. And in fact, when you come to New York, what's at Grand Central Station, there's a restaurant. Oh, I forget the name of it. But if you go on downstairs where the restaurants are at Grand Central Station, on the 2 opposite ends of the restaurant, if you put your ear to one side, you can hear what they're talking about at the other side. I forget the name of the restaurant. It's amazing, and people poo-pooed it, but they have a little signer in there now, and it tells you, put your ear here, and it tells the guy on the other side, put your ear there, and you can talk to each other like it's a walkie-talkie.
Wow.
Yeah, it's right outside the seafood restaurant out there down there, Grand Central.
Right?
Yeah, only in New York. That's right, a New York experience.
It's been a blast talking to you. I truly am honored. But before I let you go, and you've already given some great words of advice, especially the respect thing. I agree with that 100%. But do you have any words of advice for anybody that's maybe considering a career in law enforcement or the military, or just general advice on growing up and being a true adult and being an American patriot?
I'd say, Murph, that there's no greater there's no greater sacrifice or no greater feeling of satisfaction than public service. I enjoyed my time in the private sector, 20 years plus, but the feeling you get from connecting to people in the public sector is just overwhelming. It just warms the heart. And always in any organization, anything you do, you're going to get the highs and the lows. and you got to realize that sometimes you may not get promoted when you're supposed to get promoted. Sometimes people that, you felt they were going to help you didn't help you the way they should. Sometimes you may think that you got the short end of the stick. That's all part of life. But you control your attitude and realize there's going to be a brighter day, If you try to stay focused and try to, I tell people when we're retired, like us, you determine what you're going to remember. Why wake up every day being pissed off because something happened to you? You can't change it. You're still alive. Let's enjoy your life. And then when you operate like that, I've found you connect with other people. You both give each other that positive energy and feedback. So you get to the point where our second careers in life and third careers, you only want people around you with positive energy. Nobody wants to, I know at my state, you don't want to be around somebody that's moping all the time and they always got a sad story. And, if you engage in 5 minutes, the world's going to end. The world, hey, we're all dealing with something. Put it in your back pocket and keep moving forward, So I just tell people to stay focused. And to your point, when I would go out and do presentations, especially when I became an ASAC in Philadelphia, after the camp presentation, the most important conversation was when parents and people would come to me, adults, should I tell my son to join DEA? Should I tell my daughter to think about being a special agent? I tell her, absolutely. I said, it's a great job. You're helping people, and you're taking the bad guys off the street. I said, are there problems? There are always going to be problems, but we try to solve these problems. But I said, there's no greater feeling than doing that, And it's funny. I can't remember his name, but just before I retired, there was an agent in Philadelphia that called me and told me, he said, I was one of those young guys in Philadelphia that heard you give that talk, and that's why I joined DEA. Yeah, that just warmed my heart, because it's a great organization helping people, and with DEA you got the global network. The DEA is the organization which you and I make an agreement to do something July 27th, 2026. If we don't talk to each other between now and then, if I didn't heard from you, you haven't heard from me, we know July 27th, 2026, we're going to make sure we complete that assignment.
Exactly.
Your word is everything. Your word is everything, and you're working with those type of people, and how refreshing is that?
Absolutely. So true words to live by there for the young people that I've been looking at the demographics, and it seems like we're picking up a younger audience now.
Oh, good.
So it's,
good.
These are true words of wisdom from somebody who became a legend himself, who went from A to Z, ended up where he started, but in a much different position as the leader. So I looked on social media. I really can't find you anywhere, but I was looking at different podcasts, and I know that you've been on Inside the Life with Giovanni Rocco and Dutch McAlpin, both who have been guests here on the show before, and on Gold Shields with Dan Murphy and Tommy Smith.
Right.
Dan was a previous guest here on the show as well. Love all those guys, man. They're fantastic. Yeah. So I didn't listen to them because I try not to listen to other podcasts before I interview somebody, because I don't want. This is my podcast,
Sure.
I don't want to repeat what they're saying, but I encourage you to go check out both of those. One is Inside the Life, and that's the one that's sponsored by the Mob Museum out in Las Vegas with Giovanni and Dutch, and the other is Gold Shields with Dan Murphy. Yeah, and we're probably related somewhere. We got that family tree that looks like this.
There you go. The Murphys.
And Tommy Smith, who are just two retired NYPD detectives that are funny. That I saw them at IECP this year. They were in the Galls booth over in the vendor area, and hadn't seen them in a couple of years, and it's like we were together last night.
Yeah.
So check out those podcasts. Lew, thank you so much, brother, for coming on the show, for everything you've done for this country, for your patriotism, for being a hero that you'll never admit to, because heroes never know that they're heroes, but you are. So I hope we can stay in touch.
No, let's do that. And I want to turn it around and thank you again. As I mentioned during the break, maybe not on the podcast, but to thank you and Javier, what you guys do to put it out there with the challenges that DEA is up against and how we successfully handle those challenges. And so it gives the public around the world a better appreciation and understanding of what DEA does.
Well, thank you for saying that. You're making me blush.
For real, it makes us proud. I mean, you don't get the feedback, but when we're sitting with family and friends and people that may are on the fence, they support what we do and not support. They say, boy, these guys are up in some challenges, and they're not in their own environment. They're in another environment and playing by the rules and trying to protect us over here. And it just raises the bar when people understand, well, yeah, we're connected. That's part of our organization. This is what we do. We're the good guys.
Excellent. Thank you for saying all that. And ladies and gentlemen, you'll see up on the screen here, I'm putting a copy of Lew's book, DEA Special Agent, My Life on the Front Lines. I'm telling you, it's a good read. It won't take you long to read. It's not that long of a book. It's not one of those War and Peace books, thank goodness, because I'm a slow reader.
You and me both.
It gives you a glimpse of what was going on back in the day in New York City, which I love reading those kind of books. And then when you know people that are mentioned in the book, it makes it a little more interesting for me. But, thank you, Lew, for your service, but also thanks for taking the time to write the book, to give the outside world a look inside. I coined this stupid little phrase that I believe in 100%, and that is, just because we retire does not mean that our oaths ever expired.
Right.
You're continuing to do what you can for the people of New York. You're involved in the kids groups, which is extremely important. You're supporting the DEA Educational Foundation and the DEA Survivors Benefit Fund. I know that you're involved with a group that I forgot to mention, and I meant to, the Federal Law Enforcement Foundation there in New York City. That's right. Mm-hmm. Who is just fantastic. And what I really like about them is they always have cigars when they finish talking.
Right. It's a New York style cigars.
That's it. I'm easy and cheap.
There you go.
Well, brother, thank you very much. And for all our listeners, thank you again for continuing to come by. If you're listening to this and you haven't checked us out on YouTube, do me a favor. The channel on YouTube is starting to grow. I'm trying to grow it as much as we can. Just go over and type in Game of Crimes Podcast in the search bar. Go down, click on the subscribe button, watch the episodes, not just listen to them, but get to meet the people, the studs and studettes that I bring on here. Hit the like button and continue to support us. I don't understand why you keep coming back, but actually I do. And just like you heard today, you come back because you enjoy playing the biggest, the baddest, the most dangerous game of all, and that's our Game of Crimes. God bless you all. We'll see you next week.